Greetings. Welcome everyone to another Wednesday evening with the Clear Mountain Monastery community. This evening we're very happy to have Venerable Khemarato Bhikkhu zooming in with us from Thailand. Venerable, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for the invite. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, so I'll read a quick bio of you because there's actually not that much information available about you on the internet. Hopefully we'll maybe flesh out a little bit more of that this evening, but also a bit more about Open Buddhist University, which is something you've created and curated. So, a former software engineer from Silicon Valley, Khemarato Bhikkhu is the founder and chief librarian of the Open Buddhist University. He ordained in 2019 and currently lives in Thailand. Open Buddhist University is a free digital resource founded in 2020. Though unaccredited, it offers an English language curriculum in Buddhist studies from an early Buddhist pan-sectarian historical perspective, as championed by scholars like Bhante Analayo. Designed for English speakers, the Open Buddhist University, or OBU, organizes content from across the web into self-directed syllabi. With 16 courses on Buddhist fundamentals, it provides a place to chill and learn about Buddhism. That's a quote. Combining academic rigor with open source accessibility for the digital generation. And just to give people an idea about the evening, we were thinking about maybe asking Venerable if you would give us a brief tour of the Open Buddhist University, doing a screen share, and then we'll probably ask you questions just focusing on a programmer's renunciation. So perspectives from Silicon Valley coming into this Buddhist life that you live now. But if you'd be willing, can you take us on a short tour of Open Buddhist University?
Sure, sounds good.
All right.
So let me get my screen share started.
Okay. All right, we're good. He's gonna have to.
So this is the website. It's buddhistuniversity.net. And in general, there's two ways of studying depending on how much direction, how much kind of structure you prefer. The courses are going to be a bit more structured. That's these. And then a little bit less structure is the library. So that would be these topics here. The courses have the same content as the library. So if you go to this Buddhism 101 course, this is the outline for the course. That's actually going to have the same material as the Buddhism topic here, which kind of just lays out all the material as just individual books. So that's kind of the two different ways. The courses go from Buddhism 101, just kind of general introduction for beginners, then into Buddhism as a religion. So this is kind of the religious aspects, the history of Buddhism, how the Sangha works. The practice of Buddhism, this is going to be about the individual practice, what we practice, when we practice Buddhism, why we practice that way. And then the Buddha's words, we're starting to get into the Pali Canon. This is the course by Bhikkhu Bodhi. And then into philosophy, ethics, and kind of into more advanced courses from there. And in the library, the topics are arranged somewhat hierarchically. So under the Buddhist practice, we've got all of these different sections of the library on different aspects of Buddhist practice, from the Buddhist path overall, divided into sila, samadhi, panya, and all the way, through the different kinds of meditation, vipassana, samatha, and to nibbana. And under the Buddhist religion, you can learn about the different forms, Sri Lankan, Burmese Buddhism, the history of Buddhism, Mahayana, etc., all through the history of Buddhism, the early sects, etc. And then on the far right here, we've got the early Buddhist texts. So getting deeper into the Pali Canon and even into Agama studies if you want to go really deep into it. And then at the very bottom here, I've got a few sections of the library on more secular topics, because as I've been finding open source material online, I've also found a number of interesting things about secular topics. So I do collect some of that here as well. So that's kind of a basic overview. Did you want me to talk about anything more specifically?
That's great. I think we can ask some questions based on this, actually.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable.
Great.
Feel free to turn on your video again. I think we'll have the bandwidth.
Okay.
And but we're gigantic. Here we go. So one question, just first of all, I believe you created most of that on your phone, which is an astounding feat. And also speaks to an interesting situation you have where you're living a quite austere forest monk life in Thailand. And yet you've been tapped into this kind of digital ecosystem as well. Why did you create the Buddhist University? And is there, it's such a wide-ranging scope of topics. Has there been one or two that you found to be really surprisingly or especially interesting to you that you'd feel like you can just keep going deeper?
Yeah. So the why is, coming here to Thailand, being, for at least a time, I was the only Prafarang, the only white monk here at this temple. So I kind of have to organize my own studies. There's no Vinaya classes and so on for me here. So I kind of had to organize my own studies. And I figured that since I'm doing all that work anyway, to find what material is available and organize it into a curriculum for myself, I might as well take the extra couple steps and polish it up and put it out there for other people who might benefit from it as well. So that was kind of the motivation. I originally did that just on Google Drive because that's kind of how I organize things for myself. And it was in conversation with Bante Sujato, he had really encouraged me to make it into a proper website many times. I resisted for a while because as you said, I'm trying to live this rather austere forest monk lifestyle. I didn't really want to jump right into making websites and doing this kind of stuff. I wanted to leave that behind, at least for a little while. So for a few years, I kind of resisted that idea, but eventually relented after he pestered me enough times. So that's kind of the history.
And has there been any, such a wide-ranging scope of topics? Have there been one or two or three that have been especially, or one or two that have been especially kind of interesting or surprisingly so to you that you've delved into?
I would probably say like that Buddhist religion topic / course was really fun to put together and was really interesting. Kind of diving into the history of Buddhism has been, and the many different forms of Buddhism has been really interesting to me because there's thousands of years of history across all of Asia. And I had never really been a student of history before, but having this kind of, having something I really care about, which is the religion, and having that be like a entry point into learning about history has been really interesting.
Yeah, I would just recommend everybody who's at all interested, just go on to the website and check it out, buddhistuniversity.net. And what Venerable has done is, it's just a very well curated library of place. That's one function of it, where Venerable has rank like ranked different entries, whether that's audio or writings or video. And it's a very, I think, intelligent kind of ranking system based on kind of 8 points. Is it difficult to find elsewhere? Is it freely available? Is it beautiful? Is it in well-written English? Is it a unique perspective? So I've found that just rather fascinating, and see that you're still adding, you're adding new sources, it seems, pretty frequently, so people can find updated entries as you go along. And that kind of just brings up a question, maybe tying back into more of your story, is did you ever take a break? Like, you were in Silicon Valley, doing a lot of programming, and then, eventually, became interested in Buddhism, meditation, and then came to the monastery, and now there's this website. But yeah, tell us about all this, the intervening time from when you first became interested in Buddhism to where you are now. What was the curve of your technology use and interest? And was there a break, or has it been just more and more, or less, or was there a valley? Yeah,
Programming computers.
Yeah, there was definitely a break. When I kind of first left my job in New York, but for a Silicon Valley company. Then I decided to take a break from working for a while and just focus on my meditation practice. And so I stayed at the Buddhist Insights Retreat Center. I think you know those folks.
Good friends.
Yeah. And so it was staying there for a few months as their first resident anagarika, that it kind of became my halfway house. I kind of figured that where I wanted to take my career from that point forward was more in the monastic direction. This was always, even when I was working in Silicon Valley, the part of the year that I always looked forward to the most was taking a month off and going on a meditation retreat. And so I figured I can just make that my full-time job. There's no need to look forward to only one part of the year, Yeah. So that was kind of my transition. And then I was a wandering anagarika for about a year, traveling to different monasteries and staying around and visiting many different teachers before deciding on a place to settle down here in Thailand. And then for a year, I was an anagarika in Thailand. And even after ordaining for another, I think a year or so, I was also pretty off technology. So that was a good couple, 2.5, something like that, years that I was not coding, I didn't have a laptop. I wasn't doing any of that. So I was just really focused on my meditation practice and doing a bit of reading and a bit of listening to Dhamma talks, but mostly just kind of focusing on my own practice.
So in terms of that period of transition from, programming computers to programming the mind, so to speak, were there, if you're having been through Thailand, did you meet teachers who especially inspired you? And what were some of those encounters that really gave you faith that this actually was a path worth giving up everything you were, had at Silicon Valley for?
Yeah. Well, I think the two most impressive teachers that I met in Thailand were Ajahn Dun and Thanajan Suchart. Both are thought to be very advanced in their practice by their community. And when I met them, I really felt, okay, I can see it. Ajahn Dun, he just, when I saw him, even just walking, just like how mindful and how pure and how gently he even just walks, was really inspiring. You read those suttas about how some monk would be walking through, and just how seeing them walk was inspiring to people.
Us to be inspiring.
Yeah. And you're kind of, you can kind of imagine it, but it's a bit hard to believe. But then, when I experienced that myself, I saw him just practically floating, practically gliding along. Just, yeah, I was like, wow, that's Sadhu. That really was, okay, I can see it.
With Ajahn Suchat, I mean, he's one of the monks I have such huge faith in. Ajahn Dunn as well. And in fact, we're airing an interview we did with Longpor Suchat later this month. And when I've been in his presence, there's a sense almost of an echoing. It's the most transmission-like presence I've almost ever felt.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories just of your encounter with him about what has moved you about him specifically?
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely get that feeling as well. When you speak with him one-on-one, like, look into his eyes, it's just like pure emptiness. Like you can just, there's nothing there. It's really incredible. At least gives me goosebumps. Yeah. And it really is, as you said, a transmission. Like you can feel that it's just, Dhamma coming straight at you when you ask him anything.
Going back in the story a little bit, so you probably grew up in America, and at least you were working in America, and before you came to Thailand and actually met these various inspiring teachers, what was it that first inspired you? Did you do a meditation retreat? Did you somehow come across the Pali Canon, which is almost unheard of? Or what were those initial steps? And was there a moment when you were like, okay, I've been splitting up doing my job for 9 months and then 3 months of retreat, and then now I'm just ready to cut the cord to the job? And so a little bit of that backstory, a bit more if possible.
Sure. Yeah. So I first started meditating in university. As a kid, I was diagnosed with ADD, ADHD. Was not to toot my own horn, but I was smart enough that high school wasn't really much of a problem for me. I could kind of coast through. But then when I went to university, I actually have to study and work hard. This is a different level. And that's when, the ADD started to be a bit more of an issue for me, being very hard to focus. And I had heard that meditation can help you focus. So when I saw a poster for a Zen sitting group at the university, that's actually where I started to formally meditate. And, a lot of gratitude to that first teacher of mine, because he wasn't saying things from the Buddhist perspective, like explicitly. He wasn't using Buddhist terms. He wasn't, but it really was from the Buddhist perspective in terms of its content. He found a nice way of explaining how the mind works and how meditation works that really spoke to where I was as a kind of secular atheist kind of person. So that was where I started to meditate and started to get some benefit from it. I did find that I was able to focus more, and it did help with emotional regulation and these kinds of things. And then it was my junior year of university. I studied abroad in London. And I remember visiting the Victoria and Albert Museum. At least at that time, they had a statue garden with a bunch of Buddhist statues. And I remember just being really inspired by them. There was a particular Guanyin statue, Avalokiteshvara statue, that just really captured me. It just radiated metta and karuna in a way that just bowled me over. I just there at the museum, I just sat down in front of the statue and just started to meditate in its presence. And that was really kind of started to open something in me that wait, there's maybe more to this Buddhist thing than, just a kind of mental technology. And then after graduating, I visited Thailand and got to visit temples and talk to people, and that started to really open up my mind to like, maybe I should take this Buddhism thing more seriously. So I started to read and, found access to insight, and that really was such a helpful resource for me that that was kind of my introduction to Buddhism, then more formally studying it.
Interesting. Yeah, that was the same for me. Access to insight. Was that before Discourse at Sutta Central, or Sutra Central existed, that you were doing access to insight? Or
I think so. Yeah, I think, or maybe, I'm not sure the exact timing, but it was definitely before Sutta Central was kind of in its
what it is now.
Current form. Yeah.
We'll jump back and forth depending on our Ajahn Kovi's my interest, I think, because I just am knowing kind of the lifestyle you've lived and these glimpses of these Thai Ajahns. I mean, it's such a unique flavor of Buddhism to touch with, and you talked about this resonance with Guan Yin, but stepping into the Thai forest tradition with teachers like Ajahn Suchat and Ajahn Dun, you're exposed to a lot of things like body contemplation, asubha practice, to this level of austerity, which is very unique to this entire ethos. So I'm curious, what kind of practices have you found in that Thai tradition that have been that you feel are underrepresented in the Western Buddhist mind in general, that have been meaningful, and why?
The first one that comes to my mind was actually that I've had the opportunity a few times now to go and see autopsies, as well as to, go and see cremations of bodies. So when you mentioned asubha and kind of special Thai practices, that's definitely up there. It's very visceral, when you're standing right there and, they're cutting open the body and you see the organs, and you can really like, okay, that really is what a body is like when you get right down to it.
Yeah, I have a photo album of asubha pictures, and I've shared it with a few people, and they say I've never been so afraid of someone seeing my search history before. And so I'm curious, like, for those listening.
No, it is. It's even more taboo in our culture than pornography. It's
So
amazing.
that's such an interesting, two sides of the same coin. For those who are hearing about you going to see a bloated corpse be cut open and are maybe not completely enamored with the idea, why do that? What effect did it have on you to see that? And I find I've done that too, and I find the 3 or 4 day-old ones the most powerful and smelly too. So
yeah. What's impact? I mean, just I don't know. It's just visceral. It's just when you see it, you can map it onto your own body so clearly. That's been my experience. So then even when I come in, back to the monastery and I'm doing the 32 parts of my own body, a body scan or something, when it comes to, feeling the inside, the chest cavity, like I know exactly what's in there, like I can visualize it so much more easily because I've actually seen it in person. And it's different than seeing the photos, because a lot of the photos are very garish. There maybe the flash, or there's the medical light, or there's something about the textures and the kind of like that layer of fat is kind of slippery. You can kind of see that aspect. And having had the opportunity to go multiple times, you get to see differences in different bodies, which is interesting as well. Like we know that people's noses are not the same. We know that people's ears are not the same. So but somehow it's still a bit surprising when, people's hearts can be quite different, different sizes or different shapes, or, yeah. And then being there with doctors and having the opportunity to ask questions, and they can say, oh yeah, this person was a drinker, and you can see what effect that has on their liver. Or they cut open the lungs and they can show you, okay, see this blackness here. I'm like, oh, were they a smoker? And they're like, no, this is just from living in Bangkok. That's what living in Bangkok does to your lungs.
Yeah, especially with some of them. I mean, some of the Asuba books, which are out there, just so, they don't get the resolution right. And, so it's, but yeah, going to see it in person, I remember going, and just as you're saying, there was a gentleman who, the autopsy doctor basically cut open their heart and, opened up their coronary arteries, and just, you could, clink, clink with the scalpel, see the plaque, the calcium and plaque deposits. So, very visceral. And I was always surprised. I mean, I liked the idea of going to see Asuba, but, I probably went a dozen times, and pretty much every time I would almost pass out. Like, I would literally start to pass out and would have to like hide behind the novice, kid novices who were there. It's embarrassing, but I got to have the friends to prop me up. But just to go back a little bit to the story, curious about some of the aspects of renunciation. I've got a fair number of actually friend monks who are monks now who were in the IT world, or were programmers, or working in that world, or interested in computers, and before they ordained. And for them, there really was like a hard stop. Like, they had to, the monasteries that I'm living at, these friends, part of the program is that there's kind of a forced digital detox. You're not really allowed. You have to give up your devices. You go, and after you've been there for 6 months or so, you give up your phone, and then at some point you give up your old email address, and there's this kind of forced renunciation. And a lot of them are really grateful for that, like having to put down their devices. And then some of them, I've lived at monasteries when there is actual role of the IT monk, where a lot of these monasteries, there is a computer room, which is kind of great in that, it's the only place in the monastery where there is a computer, and you've kind of got, other monks in the room at the same time. And so there is an IT monk role, but pretty much every IT monk that I've known has tried to, subtly or not so subtly, like explode the position from the inside, like destroy the IT monk position, and either outsource it to, a layperson who doesn't live at the monastery, or just sees the whole IT mind or programmer mind is actually unhelpful. Like, even after they left their devices or the computer in the cloister, and then go back to their hut, their minds are still programming. They're literally still thinking of code and trying to find ways to solve it in their minds, even when their devices aren't there. And I'm curious about your experience. Was that, like, both in terms of, you mentioned you did have a period of digital detox, but how do you relate to technology now? Are you very intentional with when you do and when you don't pick up your phone or your device? Or what do you recommend for people, whether monastics or for lay people who are trying to figure out a healthy middle ground, where they say they can't give up their phones permanently, or they have reasons that they need to be online? But how do you recommend?
I've tried many different things, and it's kind of depends. And I mean, I definitely feel the kind of the danger of it. You watch a wonderful interview on YouTube, and then YouTube is recommending, other videos, and, the algorithm is very good at hooking you, at getting you engaged and trying to pull you down, So there's definitely dangers there. I don't recommend technology to most monks, I would think. I think it's probably true that, most monks need time away from the technology. I know I certainly did. And there's times now where I'm feeling a bit like, okay, but I just try to tune in and kind of listen to that part of myself, that when I'm feeling like, okay, that's enough technology for now, I take the phone and put it in a box and seal it up and go and walk in the forest and get some space away from it. And I think that, being a monk, one of the wonderful things about it is that there's no like pressure in that sense. Like when you're working, there's, you've got deadlines, you've got, targets you have to hit and so on. But as a monk, if I just, okay, for the next few days, we're not adding any more features to the website, like that's fine. Nobody is, I don't have a boss who's telling me like, okay, you got to add this, you got to do that. And even when other monks here need IT support, of course, I've kind of had that role at the temple here, because people know, oh, Alex, he was an IT person. So they think, can you help me transfer files here or do this? And if I tell them, well, I'm off technology for the next couple of days, they're very understanding of that. So for me, it's that kind of freedom to step away when I need to, and just trying to really be in touch with that kind of aspect. That's kind of my balancing point now.
One of our inheritance from growing up in the digital age is just very proliferative minds. And it's interesting because a lot of the meditation instructions you get in Thailand, such as just remaining with the meditation word Buddho, seem to work better for someone raised in a rural environment where they have a very natural capacity for samadhi. And most moderns don't. At least our thinking minds are very active. And a lot of monks I've known have really had to, and a lot of practitioners have had to navigate that fact. And either lean into wisdom practices, use death contemplation to kind of cut thinking, just acknowledge that their samatha won't be as good, but that their wisdom capacity can be quite profound in its own right, and that, that's actually a valid route as well. How have you found, how does one use and tame the thinking, programmed mind how does one practice well with meditation if we're with this inheritance of proliferative thought?
That's an excellent point. Yeah. I've also struggled a lot trying to do Buddho. It's a bit too slippery, or something a bit too simple for my mind, which needs something more to chew on. I've found the Mahasi technique to be a lot better for me. It seems to be a good balance for my personality between something it's simple enough and direct enough to your experience that it kind of keeps the mind anchored in what's present, whether that's the rising and falling of the abdomen, or if you're doing walking meditation, the movement of the feet, right? But it's complex enough to, you're, okay, wait, is that lifting? Okay, is that moving? Is this placing? You're changing the words, you're trying to be very precise. And so it kind of captures that kind of engineering side of my mind in a way that's much more compelling, or kind of brings the whole of me into the meditation more directly.
How does, can you just describe a little more about the Mahasi technique, and specifically how it doesn't become a kind of clenching, noting every single thing in a kind of fixated way, which I know is a pitfall of Mahasi.
Right. Well, you just catch what you can, like if you miss something, well, it's already in the past.
And what is
right?
What is the technique, actually, if you can define it quickly for those who don't know Mahasi?
Oh, right. So the main thing is that so I like to explain it as being a mantra practice. I know this is a bit maybe unorthodox, but just like Buddho is a mantra, that you're using the verbalization in the mind, you're just repeating Buddho, Buddho. When you're doing the Mahasi technique, at least as I do it, you're saying in your head words, but these words correspond to what's actually happening in the present moment. So if you're doing walking meditation, you're saying in your head, stepping right, for example, as the right foot moves, you say in your head, stepping right. And as the left foot moves, you say in your head, stepping left. Or if you're slowing down, or if your mindfulness gets sharper, and then you can say, the foot is lifting, right? The foot is moving forward. The foot is, getting placed onto the ground. And by using that as the mantra, it kind of, at least to me, it connects that thinking mind to the, like, what's physically happening, what's actually physically real. So mostly it's about postural practice, if you're kind of putting it into the satipatthana. So when you're reaching, know you're reaching. When you're sitting, know you're sitting, right? So this is kind of the sutta justification for this practice. And then if something happens, something comes up, a hindrance comes up in the mind, in your experience, that draws you away from the movement of the foot, right? It's noting what it is that happened. So if there was pain and aversion, and, then you note, okay, pain or aversion. And if you heard something and the mind moved off of the foot to go and, what was that sound? Then you just know, okay, it's just hearing. It's just the sound. And doing that consistently for both pleasant and unpleasant sensations, I find to be extremely helpful in producing equanimity. I know that some people prefer to, just note, hearing, or feeling if there's a painful feeling. But I think it's really important that you do it for both. When you feel something that's pleasant, you just note it as just feeling. And when you feel something painful, noting it as just feeling. And so then the mind starts to come into equanimity. It starts to, oh, right, this pleasant feeling is just a feeling, just like all those painful feelings that I noted as feeling. And when you feel something painful and well, it's just a feeling. Well, it's just a feeling, just like all those painful feelings that I've noted feeling with in the past, or all the pleasant things and so the mind starts to come into equanimity and starts to, okay, it's just a feeling. And so then the noting actually becomes a very consoling kind of a thing, very tied to what's happening, but also kind of encouraging that equanimity. So I find it just a fantastic practice.
Well, that's great to hear. And I think one of the liabilities of practicing the Mahasi technique, say in a Western meditation center, is that it is a very rarefied experience. You go for a weekend or a week or a month even, and then you go back to your normal life where no one else is noting, whereas you practicing it in, a good forest monastery, in a good monastery, you've got relationships, you've got other people who you're talking to. There's a whole context. So you're using this noting technique, which is a very specific way of using the brain, but isn't so compartmentalized that it's absolutely different from every other aspect of your life, which it can be for, some retreatants in America. I did want to go a little bit.
I like to, just to kind of tie that in, one thing I can add there is that I think you can extend the Mahasi technique a bit, or at least I do. I feel free to. So when I'm working digitally, I can say, moving the cursor, clicking, typing, so then you're still there. You're still with, what you're doing, right? But while you're using the computer, it's hard to do. It's a bit of a weird thing, but I do find that you can kind of start to bridge it. Or when you're in your relationships, you're talking to somebody, it's not just, hearing, and then you're shutting down. I've known Mahasi meditators who kind of get this antisocial or something kind of vibe. But, I think you can note the Brahma Viharas as they arise. For example, if you're talking to somebody and you feel compassion for the story that they're telling you, that's a wholesome thing. But, and you note it. You say, oh, compassion is arising, and, maybe you even have a bit of joy, oh, I'm happy that karuna is arising within me in this conversation,
Nice. I think right when you were talking about using the Mahasi technique with your computer, I think this person, one of our really close people, Dave, said you can note consoling. And I think that applies both to your arousing of metta and having skill, both the actual words can be consoling, can be smoothing, and also you're using like a computer console. So it's like consoling. I don't know if Dave meant
you got
that.
there. That was
I don't
good.
know,
That was
but,
good.
Consoling.
Not sure.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
A programmer
maybe.
joke.
This
Okay,
is
I
your first
appreciate it.
Kobe-loism. It's
it might be
there's
Dave.
many
Might
more
be
to come.
Daveism.
Mhm.
Let's go with one question. I think relevant is, Ajahn, I was just wondering how to get rid of attachment to my phone. So
A phone autopsy, or how's
Nice.
Yeah. Well, definitely the detox is really valuable, right? The and being really mindful of how you feel after you use it has been very helpful for me. Like you say, okay, I'm going to use my phone the next hour, whatever, and you do it, put it away, and then just sit with and feel, like, how do I feel different having used my phone, and not to, judge, not to, but just tuning into how you feel. I think that's also very helpful for meditation, because many times we meditate and the meditation is a struggle. It's really, it feels really hard and we feel like, oh, that meditation did not go so well, But then if you kind of, after the focus time, you just kind of relax. Okay, I'm not trying to meditate, but you just tune into the body in a sense of like, how do I feel after having done it? I often feel like, oh, okay, actually, I do feel better than I did before. I feel grateful that I did that, and many times it's the same with the phone, the opposite. I mean, like after you're like, you can feel, that there's things swimming around in your head that you might not want, or, the body feels tense. It feels uncomfortable. You can kind of feel the heart kind of being squeezed,
Yeah, Ajahn.
And so just really kind of getting that feeling and being in touch with that. And then you start to like, okay, I can see the gratification. I can see the danger, and having had experience of putting it aside, I see the escape.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ajahn just felt kind of joking about seeing like a phone autopsy. But I mean, this word asuba, it really does just mean unbeautiful. And for me, I mean, looking at or imagining different parts of the body is gross and disgusting, but also just like the activity of using a phone, just like I think I've seen art exhibits or, with like, someone, pictures of people not paying attention to any of their surroundings, but with the phone removed, or, the other picture of like what someone's face looks like when they're, totally glued to their phone, or just, everything that surrounds kind of compulsive or obsessive phone use. It's kind of ugly. It's asuba in itself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. And being in a community where most of the monks here are not using phones is really good, because then there's kind of that social aspect in the sense of like, I there's no pressure on me to do it, right? Which is very helpful, of course, being in that kind of community. And then the other aspect is I can see other monks who, are going through very peacefully, and and I'm sitting here and I can kind of have some some hiri otapa, of like, okay, I'm not looking very monastic right now.
So we have a question from the chat. When I looked at the Asuba video, a person was taking out and cutting the organs. My mind felt agitated, not by seeing the organs, but the cutting seemed like a violent act. How does one work with this? And just to give maybe a dovetail on that, why is Asuba useful? Like, why is it actually good practice at all? So, but first, Vandana's question.
Yeah. Well, at least for me, I mean, the context matters, right? Like doctors have to cut into bodies to heal, right? And so, just reminding yourself that, this is the intentionality here, right? Like when you're at the autopsy, it's this doctor is cutting open this person in order to, figure out why they died, in order to give some closure to their family, right? There is like a positive motivation behind the act. And so it's not violent in and of itself. It's always about the motivation, the intention behind the act, right? So just reminding yourself, if you watch a video of a surgery, the intention here is not to harm the person, it's to heal them, it's to help them. So, and even if we're experiencing surgery, I've had a surgery, very minor, as a monk here. And, that was very helpful for kind of, again, consoling, of kind of, calming the mind, because, I wanted to watch. So I'm looking and watching the doctor cutting in, and that animal part of the brain is, kind of starts to freak out a bit, like, oh, he's cutting into me, but you can kind of talk to yourself and no, he's helping you, he's not trying to harm you, he's trying to help. And just kind of, at least for me, telling that to myself really helped to kind of calm the mind down. And then the benefit of the Suba you asked is, I think, just equanimity again, because our natural tendency is to be attached to bodies. And so kind of reminding ourselves that bodies are not something worth attaching to is extremely important. If we weren't attached to bodies, we wouldn't have been born in the human realm, right? So just by being human, being here, automatically that that you are attached to bodies. So kind of reminding yourself that these things are not beautiful, that they're not worth attaching to.
Yeah, and I think just this ties in a certain way to our last question before we go over to Zoom. Just a lot of people feel like when we talk about, looking at the unbeautiful aspect of a body, that, oh gosh, is there no beauty in a monk's life? What is, where is the love? Where's the love in a monk's life? And this last question is, Venerable, what is one thing that you love about monastic life? What is one thing that's beautiful about monastic life for you?
Oh, just one.
You can do three.
Three, yeah.
Or 108. You can do 108 if
I can
you
do
like.
3. Okay. Yeah. The freedom, right? As I said, we don't have bosses, we don't have this, to the extent that we have social pressure, it's social pressure in a good direction, right? It's pressure to behave well, to keep your virtue, to become a better person, or pressure to, okay, you don't need to do this, go meditate, reminding you to become the person that you want to be, or at least that I want to be. This is really beautiful to me, that kind of the kind of community. And then of course the fact that the community is built on generosity, that we're fed because people see that what we're doing is valuable and they want to support it, they want to help out, and that I'm not taking anything from anyone. That kind of clarity of conscience that I can have, is just so liberating, so light.
Venerable, it's been a pleasure to talk, and we honestly could probably go for another hour and a half and have plenty to talk about, but we don't have that long. So what we're going to do is go over to Zoom. I'm pasting the link into the chat for those who want to join us there. And we'll get to speak with Venerable Khemarato for another about 45 minutes for those who want to jump onto that. And Venerable, for creating Open Buddhist University and just kind of channeling the practice of the Thai Ajahns in this interview. The noting of the Mahasi method and Asuba I found particularly meaningful. Thank you, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation.
All right, we'll wrap up here, and people can join us on Zoom soon.